Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for OneView 102 Intermediate Features and Developing Workflows. Here's a quick summary. First, we'll cover a quick summary of what the onboarding feature is. Then we'll move on to profile navigation tips and tricks, after which we'll jump into the payer section and do a deep dive. Next, we'll cover reporting basics. And finally, I'm going to demo the functionality in Notes in the login section. So that's our plan for today's training. So let's jump right into it. Here we are at the main team page. And first, I'd like to explain what the onboarding feature really is. So the onboarding feature is a way to send an invitation to your provider, giving them access to their own profile so that they can help build it up. And it's a really neat feature because you can control what information you'd like them to fill out and build up in their own profile, as well as you can customize the invite that you're going to send them. So first, we're going to start out with where and how to send the invitation, and that's actually where you can customize the invite as well. To do that, I'm just going to click on this message button right here. That's going to open up in its own little modal here. And as you can see, for our demo team, we already have a message that has been saved here previously. So the good news is you can see once you've put that message in, it stays and is part of the system for future sends that you would like to include. So I'm going to click right here because if this is the first time that you're using this, this will be blank. And if you want to come back and change it later, you can also do the same function. We're just going to click on this little editor button. That's where you can come in and you can either enter for the first time a subject and message, or if you're going to make any edits, you can come in here and put in your subject and message and change it. This little template is also available on the ModioU page, right where you found this recording. So you can use this template as a way to kind of gather an idea of what you'd like to put in. Of course, we encourage you to make sure that it fits exactly with what you want your providers to be filling out in their various sections, and that it meets with your organizational goals and guidelines. So I'm going to hit cancel right now, and we'll come back and review this modal a little bit more. Once you have your subject and message set up, now you're ready to send out your invitations. To do that, there's a few ways that you can go about it. First off, you could use tags up here at the top. So for example, if I wanted to send the message to everybody that has the Colorado tag, I could simply use that tag and it'll put everybody's email addresses up here. I could also come down here where I could type in a provider's first or last name. It'll start searching. I could go through the list. I can pick that one provider that I wanted. If I stick to just using one provider at a time, I also have the option to email myself a copy of that onboarding invitation. Again, that's only available if you stick to just sending it to one provider at a time. If I come down a little bit further, I can also scroll through the list. Now, if this is your first time sending out onboarding invites, all of these little envelopes will look like this instead, where they're ready and say new invitation. Because we've used this as our demo team, you'll see that those little envelopes do change over time once you've sent the profiles have been completed, etc. Over here, because a lot of these are just test profiles, you'll see that our email addresses are in red because a lot of them are just placeholders and they're not real. But if this was your own platform, hopefully you've got your emails all figured out and they're real emails. And so you won't get those warning messages up here, but you can add those multiple emails up there at one time, and then you wouldn't have any of these error messages. If you do have an error message and it isn't a test email, do make sure you're reaching out to support and they can help you with resolving any issues that you've got going on. Now that we've talked about how to get those ready to be sent, let's come down here to the attachment section. You'll notice there's a little information icon, and that's just letting you know that we do limit the size of the attachments for up to 10 megabytes. But you can add up to 3 attachments right here by either clicking here to browse your computer, or you can drag and drop documents right there. It also tells you what document styles are supported. This is a great way to customize your invitations a little bit more, because right here you're going to keep this fairly generic for all provider types. But if you do have a multiple different provider types on your platform and you do need to maybe customize that invitation a little bit depending on your provider type, this is a great way to accomplish that. So what you could do is maybe you need to make a specific welcome letter for a certain provider type. You could do that by creating a custom welcome letter for those different provider types and use that as one of your attachments. We also have a great tip guide that's aimed at providers that we always recommend adding as part of your onboarding invitation. Maybe you've got some kind of welcome letter already, or a map of your location. Maybe there's some kind of employee handbook or something that you need to do. The point is, anything that you're sending, you want to make sure it's not the kind of item that you need them to sign and return. This is not what this part of the platform is intended for. It's meant to just send that as part of their invitation so that they can gain access to their profile. So now that we've gone over how to customize this and how to send out those invitations, I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel right now. It's going to take us back to the main screen here, and we're going to go out to the support page. Out on the support page, you will find that we have a list of tip guides. Now up here under the coordinator section, this one is the tip guide provider onboarding. This one's going to have all of the information related to and for you as a coordinator that you will need to keep in mind for the steps that we're going over today. So this is a great tip guide if you want to learn more about all the steps and the information that we are following today in this ModioU. So this is intended specifically for you as a coordinator. The tip guide that I was speaking to that you may want to download and include as part of your onboarding message, well, that's the one that's down here. And it's this tip guide for providers guide to onboarding. We can take a quick look at that right now. And we'll get this moved up here to the top. So as you can see, it's got a quick overview of what that onboarding message looks like. Of course, once you customize it, this would have your own logo, your message, etc. One of the key ideas here is that they really need to leave that original email that comes with their invitation. And really for the provider, all they have to do is create a unique password and agree to the terms and conditions, and it's going to take them straight out to that onboarding piece where they can start filling out their information. So it goes through each of those pieces in more detail, and then it takes them to show them exactly how they're going to fill out their onboarding profile. So it talks to them and tells them how to fill out each of the pieces, how to hit the save and next, what happens if there's more information, how to handle searching through the different drop-down options, etc. It also tells them how to upload documents, and then when they're all done, how to submit as complete. There's even a part 2 for if they have to log back in, and if they've forgotten or can't find that email, there's a link right there to help them get back in. And then it walks them through the steps so that they can come back in and complete their profile. There's also this last page that makes it pretty popular for everybody, because if they are having troubles, it does direct them back to our support team, who's there to help them walk through and navigate any issues that they have. So you can see why this would be a very popular item to make sure that you have it included on that invitation. So now that we've covered how to send the onboarding message and what's available out on the support page, let's talk about how to actually go and edit the onboarding portion for the providers themselves. And one of the easiest ways to do that is actually just to come over to any of your profiles right here, and we can just click on that profile. And then if you come down here and you find the words where it says provider onboarding, that's going to open it up and take us right to that provider onboarding. Now, this is the view from the provider's perspective. And if we expand that, you can kind of see what is set up already for our demo team. So anything with those red asterisks next to it, those are those fields that have been deemed as important, that are set up as what would be required. So if the provider is filling out this section and they hit save and next and they've left one of those blank, it would make them come back up to the top and fill out whatever is blank. There's a slight limitation to that, because if they do skip over any of those areas and simply just come down here and submit it as complete, now this provider has already completed their profile, so if it doesn't show as submit as complete, but if they hadn't and they just hit submit as complete, it would allow the information to go through, which is just a good reminder that you do want to make sure that you're auditing all the information that your providers are putting through on these templates. So once you get back their information, and we'll go over how to check when we go over the report section in here in just a little bit. But let's take a look at how to edit these sections. So in order to get to the editor, it's pretty straightforward. We just click right here for onboarding editor, and you'll notice that all of the provider information went away. So it really doesn't matter which profile we choose, because once we're in the editor, we're in the single template that's set up for the team. And if you do have access to multiple teams, you have to keep in mind that each team can have its own different setup for onboarding. So you would want to set up, if you're going to have different templates, that you set them up for each team you have access to. So now that all that information has disappeared, we have access in here and we can make our edits and changes. Some information is required. So if we click on the box for first and last name, you'll see that that defaults to being a required box, because we do need a first and last name to make the profile work there. So one thing that you can do, though, is make that read only. Since you are entering those first and last names when you're creating the provider's profile, you can limit that down to read only so that they can see their first and last name, but they can't do anything to change it. So if you had a provider that has maybe a name that's commonly shortened, or you don't want them to be able to do that, you can always mark that as read only. And as we move down, you can go to other fields. So like maybe mobile phone is super important to you. You could always mark that as a required field. And then all you'd have to do is hit save, and that becomes part of your template. Anything that you see that has a green plus next to it, you can open that up and enable it, and then it becomes an area that you can add to it. If you don't want that to be part of your field, you don't have to, of course. You can just leave that turned off. If there's whole sections that you don't want to have included, you can also just turn those off. So maybe education and training or something that you're going to put in yourself because you get it off of the CV or something. Maybe hospital affiliations is just not something that you use. Or you can scroll down here a little bit. Maybe medical malpractice. Everybody has the same one, so you're not going to put that in. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you can see there's a little I with a slash through it. It just means that those aren't going to be options for the provider to fill out. So if we come back, you can see now, instead of having all of those different items, we have limited it down to the ones instead. I'm going to come back out to the team and we'll just pop into another provider's profile. It doesn't matter which one. And you can see what I've done hasn't actually changed anything on the actual platform itself. We haven't eliminated any of those categories or anything. All we have done is just changed how we are asking for what the provider does to enter into their onboarding. There's another way to get to the onboarding template. Alternatively, it does take a couple extra steps, but I'll show that as well. You can click on the summary tab since we're already in their profile. And then we just click on this little editor box up here in the right-hand corner, and we're right back into where the provider has their view. And then we can come back here into the editor for the whole profile. I can come and I can turn back on any of those sections that I had just disabled as well. So I can turn all of those back on. Some neat features in these different sections. So like for instance, we've got right here with peer references. If we open that up, I can change the number of peer references that are required. So right now we have that set on 3, but if we decided we needed to change that to 4, we could. And then as you can see, there's a description in here. So the peer references must be a medical director or coworker or client. And if I needed to change the wording on that, we could. So instead of it being a medical director, I could say something like must be same level of education or higher. And we'll just save that. And I'll show you what those notes look like. One of the other things that I really like is like down here where it says email. This isn't typically a required field in the platform, but if you want to make sure that you're getting email addresses for those peer references, especially if you're going to use like a peer reference form or anything, and you can hit save on that, and then that'll make sure that you're capturing those peer references with their emails too. As we scroll down here further, you can see there's lots of different options. So if you have multiple coordinators working on this, I do always recommend that you all have the same level of access, and you want to make sure that you guys are coordinating together to set up the you want as a team. Okay, so that you don't have people coming back through and changing things on you. By default, the logins section won't be active, so you'll want to make sure that you activate the login section, and then you can simply search in here for whichever login you want to add. And all you have to do as well, you can just search by typing in the letters for what you're looking for. So for example, we have set out that we want the DEA and FSMB and MPES and CAQH and PACOS. Same thing with documents. You just enable that section, and then you'll enable that group, and then you can add whatever documents that you're looking for. So if you need additional items, you can add those as you want, and then you just remember to hit save. And then we can come back and look at those changes that we made to the provider's profile. And now I'll close this one. Let's take a look at what we did here with peer references. So we've got 1 of 3 required. And when we hover over the little question mark, you can see the note and how I changed that. You can also see that there's a note on work history. So we're asking for 10 years of work history there. And if we open up logins, you can see that we're asking for, here's the logins and where they can put in that usernames and passwords. Again, when we go to the login section, I'll show you how that works, but it is something that you're going to want to audit and check, because if they put in information that's incorrect, the system's going to just accept whatever they put in. So you're going to want to verify that all of that works. With documents, it's going to give a list of the documents. And as you can see, since we asked for a color photo, so here's the document types that we asked for, but we have a color photo, it's not on the list up here because that one has already been met. So it's really a very smart system. So if you have providers that maybe have been with you for a while and you're not sure if you want to include them on your invites, for onboarding, and you're not sure if you're going to send it to just your new providers and your existing providers, just know that you can send it to your existing providers as well, because if you have all that information on them, it's really more of a matter that they'll just be looking over what's already in the system and then submitting that everything is complete. So let's go back to the team here. And now that we have covered how to update both the message and how to edit that profile, let's go out and take a look at our OneView reports module and see how easy it is to keep track of all those onboarding messages. To access the reports module, we're going to click right up here where it says reports. That's going to open up in a new window, and it's going to default over here to your standard reports. One of the best reports to run when it comes to onboarding is the provider's report. Now over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see that you have a few options. Like I said, it's going to default here to your standard reports. If you already have any custom reports, you'll see a folder there for custom reports. You'll see that you have an option for your personal collection. We'll go into that in just a minute once we save a report, because that's where those are going to land. And there's a trash can if we need to throw anything away. And then we also have a separation for our tracking reports, but those are also down here as well. But for today, and the first report that we're going to actually take a little deep dive into and take a look at, we want to open up this provider's report because it's going to help us with how to follow up on those invitations that we've sent. So I'm going to click on that provider's report, and it's going to run us a query. So once we have this report open, the reports module is really pretty cool. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. First thing I want to call attention to is that you have an onboarding dropdown right here. But what makes this report so special is the amount of flexibility that you have in customizing it. So one of the first things that I want to draw your attention to is that if you wanted to, you could do things like maybe you really want to see next to their completed status, we're going to move their names next to it. So I'm going to put it in order here. We'll go last name, middle name, first name, and we'll just move that right on over here next to their onboarding status and when it was completed. So that's pretty cool because you can just move and drag around those columns. Okay. You can also, right from the top of these, if you don't find them useful, you can mute any columns that you want. So maybe I don't need the tags column and I can just mute that right there. Or maybe I don't want the suffix column. I don't find it particularly useful for this one. Okay. If I don't want to go through each of the columns as they are over here, because this report does go on for quite a bit, if I open up this little gear icon, it'll also give me a list of all of those different column headers right here. And I can do the same thing that I was just doing by moving those around. So maybe I want it to be first name, we'll get that right there. Maybe I want it to be last name, first name, then middle. And you can see with the little eye indicator, we can turn on and off the different ones that we want or don't want to have on. So as we come through here, we can turn off things if we don't find them useful. So if I don't want any of this information about internships or fellowships or things like that, I can turn all of that information, those columns off. So you can come through here and customize this as much as you would like. and make it as useful as you want. And it can be super handy for you. The other thing that can be really helpful is if you want, there's a couple ways to go about this. You can sort and filter by the columns themselves. So you could filter just this column. So we could see, who has accepted their invitation, who has an incomplete profile, and we can narrow it down to just those filters. So we could see who is it that hasn't quite finished up their profiles there. And we will take a look here. It just takes a minute while it's running that report. And now we have a report that shows us just who exactly hasn't completed that. And if we want to, we can even download those results we come over here to this bottom right-hand corner, and we have the option to download that as a CSV, as an XLS, or even a JSON. So I'm going to download that as an Excel report. So we'll grab that. Take just a second here. And then if I wanted to, I could just grab everybody's email addresses, throw that into a BCC email, and send off a quick reminder that, hey, I need you to help finish up your onboarding profiles. So pretty useful report. I also have the option, if I think that this is a report that I'm going to use in the future, I could save this with the filters that I've already applied. So all I have to do is click right up here and hit save. And, it gives me a potential name, but I'm going to go ahead and rename this. I'm going to say this is for onboarding, and we're going to have it be incomplete and accepted invitations. And the good news is it has spell check in here because I can't spell worth a hill of beans. So, and you can see it's going to default to saving it to my personal collection. So I'll go ahead and hit save. We don't have to save it to a new dashboard or anything. And now it's back in my personal collection. If I want to go back there and take a look, all I have to do is come back here to the little ModioU starburst. And then we'll open up the folders on the side. And if I come back to my personal collection, it'll take me there. And we can filter it here real quick. And you can see there's that report that I just made. And if I ever want to rerun it in the future, I can do that. So I'm going to come back to the standard reports though, and we'll do that real quick. And I'm going to rerun that providers report one more time. We're going to open up that gear icon again. And this time we're going to come over to conditional formatting. And we're going to add a rule about the onboarding section. So I'm going to click there on onboarding. And you can add some cool rules related to the onboarding section, or really any sections. But why this is helpful is you can add some color to your reports to make some neat visualizations for yourself. So we could say that the onboarding is equal to, and then we can pick a column value. So we could do, and this time we really do have to spell it right. So we'll do accepted invitation, make sure I get that right. And then we can change the color. So maybe we want that one a nice light purple. Then we can add another rule, and we can pick onboarding again, and we can do a different color. Let's make that one pink, and we'll do is equal to, and we'll do this one as the incomplete profile. So then we can add that rule. And then we could add another rule for onboarding, and we'll do everybody that needs a new invitation. So we can make sure that we get that right. And now we can add that rule. And then we could add a rule for onboarding, and we could do the contains complete profile, and maybe we want that one a pretty shady yellow. So we could add that rule, and then we could be done. So that could make a really pretty visualization for you so that it's easy to see and break down those different changes. And you can still filter this further, do whatever you want. Again, if you need to save that, we're just going to come up here and do the save, and we can do this one. Maybe we'll put it as a colors of onboarding status, and we'll save it to our personal collection right now. Now, one thing about adding colors like that is it won't download with the colors, but if you do want to do any sort of other filtering or edits with your provider information like we did before, those will of course still download. But if you rerun the report again in the future, those colors will hold so that you have a nice visualization for you to look at. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an intro into the reports. We'll come back and take a look at reports one more time when we're going over payers and some of those payer reports as well. So let's hop on back to the personal collection here. And then we're going to come back to the platform. So now we're going to take a look at our provider's profile and take a deep dive into one of our providers and look at the healthcare payer section. So this particular provider doesn't have any healthcare payers set up, and they don't have any practice locations. So when it comes to having good information in for their healthcare payers, one of the first things you want to do is make sure that they have their healthcare location set up. And one of the neat features with the platform is that you can actually copy from other providers, or if you have an FAC profile set up. So I'm going to hit on this little copy button, and we can use one of our FAC profiles. So like the Starship Enterprise here could be a great one to copy from. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to copy from the Starship Enterprise. And that's going to give us all of these locations that Johnny Appleseed is going to be practicing out of. Then I'm going to come down here to the healthcare payers, and I can also do the same thing when it comes to having the correct payers. So I will click on the FAC profile. It's got the list of payers that I want. I'm also going to make sure that I choose the right locations that I want to make sure that they are going to have for all of those payers. So we're going to limit it down to just those locations. And as far as a payer status is concerned, if I know that they're active at all of those locations, I can choose that they're active. If I know everything's in a pending status, I can put it in pending. If I know they're not enrolled, etc. Or if I just want to make it blank, I can choose a blank status. Then all I have to do is hit save, and they will be all entered in there. Now, The only information that's going to copy over between providers or those FAC profiles, as you can see, is that it does copy over the state if there is a state that's listed there. Okay, it will not copy over any information for a provider ID, effective dates, end dates, etc. I'm going to open up this Aetna one right here by clicking on the editor box. On the front page here, this is what we call the payer information page. And you can certainly store information on the payer page if you want, but if you do have providers that go to multiple locations, you may want to store information on what we call the location level. So once I click on the location level, you'll notice that all of those same boxes and information open up so that I can store the provider ID number, effective date, end date, and their revalidation date on that location level. So if it's different between the two locations, I can store that information independently. That can be very helpful. And keep in mind, the revalidation date is there for you guys to set up. It's there to be on the reports and to help you guys so that you can know and be prompted when you really want to start that process of revalidating them at that location with that particular payer. So if you know that it takes maybe, I don't know, 3 months with Aetna, but 2 months with Blue Cross, you can set different revalidation dates per that payer. So it's entirely up to you what information you want to put there. Sometimes I know it's hard to get an end date with a payer. So if you happen to know just when their effective date is, but you know they're on a 3-year cycle, feel free to just put in an end date and then backdate your revalidation date based on that end date. Okay. If you are in the location level data and you see this information about fee schedules, keep in mind that information does not apply for you guys unless you're an actual payer and you're using our credentialing software, and then that is a different story altogether. You can still leave notes in here, and you'll notice that you can also add, if you have a contact information with that actual payer, you can put information in here, and that can also copy between records. There's also usually a link to the payer down at the bottom, so you can access their website. So you can do that as well. If you need to just manually add a payer, you can also do that. So you can click on add, come to the top. You can look for, whatever payer it is that you're looking for. No, I apologize. This is, I clicked on the practice location. Everybody can make a little mistake now and then. Add locations first that you want. There we go. And then you come down here and look for your payers. So there you go. Now we're going to look for the payer that you want. So if you want what a payer it is, and then again, you can enter that data for the location on each different level as needed. I'm going to hit cancel because we don't need that. You can also, if you have a lot of payers, you can click right here and head back up to the top, and you'll be right here at the top of the list. The information that you have and your ability to stay on top of your payers is only going to be as good as is in the amount of information that you put into this on entering your different payers. So we do have a lot of different statuses in here, so you can change those statuses. So if they're active, but then you go to re-credential them, just remember that you can change that status while they're under, you've sent out that application. You can put in when you submit those application dates. If you have to resubmit it, you can do that. You can put in an approval date, etc. So just keep that in mind. The software does need you to put in as much information as possible so that you can keep on top of that information. So that is our in-depth payer information there. So I'm going to head back to the team here, and we're going to go back out to reports. So I'll close that window and we'll open it one more time. As we come back out to reports, again, remember, it's always going to default out here to our standard reports, which is great. And from our standard reports, you might have guessed for payers, a great one to run is the payers report. We'll get that up and going here. And like before, and probably now that you're used to it, we can probably just open up that little wheel icon over here on the side and we can take a look at some of our different categories that we have over here and maybe what you want to see. So you can see when they were initially credentialed with that payer, when they're last credentialed with it, and we can, if you would like to, because this is going to be your report, you can move any of these around. There's your payer's status, what state they're in, what the category is, what the payer names are. So you can turn different things on and off. You've got your revalidation date. So if you want to move that closer to maybe that payer status or something like that, or the payer name, maybe, whatever would make these reports work better for you, that's what I would recommend doing. You can turn on and off whatever doesn't work for you. You can do the conditional formatting and add colors. There's a lot of different options in here. You can use the drop downs to filter through things on individual columns. And there's also a great filter up here so that you can filter different options on the whole report itself. Okay. Remember, one of the nice things with this is that you may have to put a lot of work in on the front end one time, but then once you save the report just exactly the way you want it, it'll be in your personal collection so that you can run that again and again. If you have anybody on your team that's especially data savvy, or you've got a data person, then I would invite them to help you with making those reports. If you have any custom report needs, we're still available to help you with that as well. But this really does help if you have anything that you want to just get in here, get your hands in it, try it out, and give it a shot at making your own specialized reports. So I'm going to go ahead and head back here to the icon. One thing I would like to show you before we leave the report is I'm going to go to my personal collection here. And one thing that can happen, especially as you're learning and playing around with it, is that you can end up with maybe a personal collection that has some old reports in it that you don't need anymore. And one thing I wanted to show you before is how to get rid of those. So if you click on the three little dots, you're able to move that item to the trash. So I did that a little fast, so let me do that one more time. I'm going to click on that and move it to trash. And then when you come over to the trash, you can find that item again, and you'll either click right there or you can click on the three little dots and you get the chance to permanently delete it. So you'll get a little pop-up and make sure that this is something that you want to delete permanently, and once you do, you can't undo it. So before you do that, you want to make sure that that's something that you want to, have gone altogether. So there you are. That's how you can do that. And then you can always just head back to the little home there, and you're back at your personal collections. If you are someone that has access to multiple teams on your drop down here, and you've got some some child teams, make sure when you launch your reports that when you're looking at your team that you check the name right here. So I've got my little ModioU team, and this is the right team that I've launched my report from. So that's my last little bit of warning on our reports module. So let's go back here. I've closed that. The last thing we need to tackle here is logins and then notes. So we looked at how to ask our providers for their logins, and any login that we get in the onboarding process is going to automatically come here into this logins dashboard, okay? And you can also add your own logins on here. So if you need to add a login and you're a coordinator, you can simply search through, find your name, or type your own name in there. And then if you have a site that you want to add that login for, you can find that site and then put in your username and password. You can also add any special notes, things like, if there's any special characters or how often the password needs to be renewed, things like that. Those are great use cases for notes, okay? You'll notice right here the little green up box with the up arrow. That'll take you directly out to the website, and that's where you can then copy and paste the username and password into. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. If you need to manually add a login for your provider, they're also listed just down below, so you can manually add them in. Again, I could just type in the name of the provider that I wanted to add it in for, search for the site that I'm looking for, and then add that username and password as well. This dashboard allows you to search by, specific account owners. So if I wanted to look them up, I could do that. You could also search by roles. So if I'm just looking for my providers, I can do that. I can search by state. You can use multiples of these drop downs as well. I can also just search for specific sites. So if I'm doing CAQH updates, I could narrow it down. And then if I want to open that up, I can open that right there, and then I can just reveal their username and password. So all I have to do is open up the site, come back, copy that username and password, put it in, and sign in. I like that it doesn't automatically put in my username and password, because then it gives me a chance, if it does need to be updated, I can update it on the website or get that updated information and then update it in the login page here and then save it as well without getting stuck in any kind of terrible loop on the website as well. Keep in mind, you're only going to want to store usernames and passwords for anything that's credentialing related, because all full access coordinators are going to have access to everybody's logins on this page. The providers can only see their own logins through their portals. Next over, we'll go to notes. This is just a dashboard where you can sort through all of the notes that have been entered into those different areas throughout the profiles. And notes really should be kept, if at all possible, for one-off situations. They're really not meant for workflow items. Sometimes they get used that way until you get your tracking set up. And then once you have tracking set up, your workflow items will be entered that way. But you can search by a particular provider's name. And then if you needed to, you could narrow it down even further to just items that are related to, like education. And then you can hover over that note. You can even come in and edit it right there. Or if you wanted to, you can click on the link and it'll take you right to that provider's profile so you can access it and make additional notes as needed. So again, this dashboard is here so that you can quickly and easily find a note if you are trying to, rather than having to scroll through and go through all those notes one at a time. Okay, One last item, and I know I said I was done with the reports module, but you know what? I'm actually not. There is one last item, and it's on the reports module. And what it is actually this report right here, the facility report. And this report, we recommend you run it on a fairly regular basis. What it does is it shows all the facility records that are in your provider profiles, and it dedupes them. So that is, it shows them as individual records. And what you want to do is come over here to the bottom, and let me close my previous Excel sheet. And you want to come and download this report. You want to download it as an Excel. That's very important. So you're going to download it as an Excel sheet. And what you're going to do is take a look at this report. And if the reason you want to check this report and check it fairly regularly is it's showing you all the different facilities that are listed in your provider profiles as unique individual facilities. And it gives you an opportunity to double check the information that's on them. And then you can make updates to those facilities if you need to. If you make any updates, all you have to do is highlight the column that you made an update in. So perhaps you know an NPI for this one. You can update the NPI and highlight it in yellow. And then you're just going to save that and send it over to support if you're outside of implementation. If you're inside of implementation, you're going to send it to your project manager, and they will get that updated on the facility record. Now, what's the advantage to that? Well, let me show you. If I'm going to go into one of the provider profiles here, and we'll go into practice employer, and we're going to open up one of these profiles here. See how this box is checked and it's going to update from that facility record. Well, if somebody comes along and updates that record through this process, and it updates maybe like the email or the fax number, or they have the billing information, etc., rather than having to come back in here and manually updating all that information, not just for Dr. Abel's profile, but for every profile that this location is attached to, it will automatically do that for the whole team. And it'll also update all of those with the payer records, etc. So it's a real time saver, not only because it's deduped, but then you don't have to go back and update all those profiles as well. So that's why we recommend running it on a fairly regular basis, just to make sure all that information is up to date and that you can then take it easy and not have to update all of those profile records. So make sure you download that, like I said, as an Excel, so that when you update those cells and highlight them in yellow and you save the file, that the yellow highlighting will stay. All right. I hope that you have enjoyed this class and learned a lot. If you do have any questions, please make sure you are reaching out to support. Take care.